Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm trying something completely different, so your feedback would be greatly appreciated. I've got a lot of exciting content planned, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now let's jump right into the video. Creepiest Reddit stories. My wife stepped on something in the lake. The next day, they found a body. A few years ago, when my daughter was a toddler, my wife and I used to take her to a nearby lake to picnic, swim, and just unwind. It was a peaceful spot, quiet, not too crowded, the kind of place where you could easily forget about the world for a while. Afternoon, after we'd finished eating, my wife decided to go for a quick swim while I stayed on the beach with our daughter. I watched her wade out into the water, the sun sparkling off the surface. A minute later, she suddenly stopped and turned to me, shouting something. At first, I couldn't make out what she said, but her expression was off. Then I heard her clearly. I think I just stepped on someone's face. I froze for a second, thinking maybe she was joking. But the look on her face wasn't playful. It was pale, almost terrified. She quickly started making her way back to the shore, her legs moving faster, like she couldn't get out of the water fast enough. When she got back to me, she was visibly shaken. She said that while she was swimming, her foot brushed against something soft, and at first she thought it was a rock or a weird patch of seaweed. But when she pressed her foot down, she felt the unmistakable shape of a face beneath the water, a nose, an eye socket. She swore she felt the hollow of the eye. I considered going in to check it out, but something stopped me. The unease in my gut, maybe. We decided to pack up and leave right after that. The next day, the local news reported that a young boy who had been missing for days was found drowned in that same lake, not far from where we had been. He'd been there the whole time, just beneath the surface. To this day, my wife is convinced she stepped on his face. The unknown man came in the house while I was alone. This isn't really a paranormal story, but I remember it so well. I was young, maybe 10 or 11, and home alone after school. I was working on my homework upstairs when someone rang the doorbell. Sometimes my friend down the street would come over, so I ran downstairs thinking it was her. There was a window above our door, and it was very high up, so usually I could stand at the top of the stairs and look through it to see who was at the door, at the top of their head. This time there was a man just looking through that window. It must have been 7 feet off the ground, and he was eyeline with it. He had a very round face, I remember, and a huge smile. It was something out of a horror movie. Then my cat, who I regularly call Slutty because he is so friendly, LOL, starts growling at him. My kitty was on the landing with me. He sees me at the top of the stair landing and just says, "Hi, I'm here to check for pests. Can you let me in?" I duck down and he says, "I saw you. I know your parents aren't home, but I need to come in." I still hear his voice clearly. I was terrified and run down the stairs and into the kitchen to grab a phone. He keeps asking me to open the door. Finally, I tell him something like, "No, you'll have to come back another time." He won't take no for answer, just keeps repeating himself. Then I tell him I'm going to call the police. All politeness out the window. Says something about me being rude and that I'm stopping him from doing his job. I keep repeating that I will call the police, and he finally starts just screaming and cursing at me. And finally, he slams his hand as hard as he can into the door. I start dialing, and he runs off, calling me a bitch. I don't finish calling the police and sit near our front door until my parents came home. I didn't even know what bitch meant. Didn't tell them because I thought I'd get in trouble. Definitely not as scary as others here, but I remember it so clearly. His weird smile, his head was perfectly round, and how he was so tall. I was really short as a kid. My true scary stories. My name is Jessica. I have a few true stories. Story 1. There is something wrong with my mom. I am a 32 female. My name is Jessica. And one time when I was 7 and my little brother Jacob was 5, we went to go and visit our parents for the weekend. My parents lost custody due to being in and out of jail, being on drugs, and my mother was abusive towards me. She was not as abusive toward my little brother Jacob for some reason I never understood. So we are visiting them at their 1-bedroom first-floor apartment. It was during Halloween time. I remember this because we made little ghosts with cloth and string and made them move and fly with the string. We are all hanging out, and it's going good. My parents' friend Jesse comes by to visit. He is a longtime friend of theirs, and me and my brother would call him Cousin Jesse. My mom starts acting weird. She just seems off for some reason. It was like a switch. She was normal, but then weird. My dad notices and takes her to the room, and then my dad comes back in the living room where we are all sitting. Then I hear my parents' door open and we all turn and see my mom standing there just staring at us with her head out of the door. My dad goes in the room with her for a little bit. Then I hear hammering in the room. Dad comes out and I see that he has a hammer and nails. He walks to the front door, locks it, and hammers the door shut so it can't be opened. He sits down on the couch and I can tell he is stressed from his facial expression. I hear the bedroom door open and see my mom crawling out the room. Seeing this freaks me out and I am crying. My dad goes over to her and takes her into the room. He come back and not too long after he backs down, she crawls back out the room and she is holding my little brown bear I got from my Happy Meal from McDonald's. She is calling my brother and I and telling us to come play with her. We say no, and she starts to cry and says to come to her. I'm bawling, and my little brother is crying. My dad is trying to get her back into the room. She gets up and runs to me and my brother. He and I are screaming and crying, running away from her. She is chasing us in the living room, yelling to play with her. We go to Cousin Jesse and hid behind him. My dad picks my mom up and takes her into the room. She is crying and yelling, no, no, no. My dad then runs out of the room and gets the hammer and goes back to the room and I hear him nailing the door shut, locking them both inside. Well, Cousin Jesse, my brother and I are just in the living room, shocked. My brother and I fall asleep. I don't remember what happened the next day, and I honestly wished I didn't remember this story, which was a horrible childhood memory. Now that I am an adult, I know that my mom was on drugs and having a bad trip, or was so high she wanted to just play with us. Thanks for letting me share. Story 2, Shadow Person at Grandma's and Grandpa's. When I was little, I lived with my grandparents on my dad's side. My mom was abusive and an addict. She was doing drugs while pregnant with me and gave birth to me addicted. My father was an addict too and let this happen, so my grandparents took me in. I remember being little, like 8 or 9, and seeing things from my peripheral vision. It was a black figure. I usually would see it while I was sitting and watching television in the living room. It was always staring from the hallway. I would turn to try and see it, thinking it was one of my grandparents checking on me, but it would always be gone. I would never see it directly in front of me. It was always just in my peripheral vision. When I was older, maybe 18 or 19, I would have sleep paralysis. I would be sleeping on my back in my bedroom, and I would feel like my bed was shaking. Then I would not be able to move or talk. I would try to break free and was able to break free a couple of times, but it was so hard. Usually I would just fall asleep. I would always see a shadow person while the sleep paralysis was happening. I saw it, but it was blurry, like staticky. This one time I could not break free and I was crying and I thought about praying. I'm not religious, but I do believe in a higher power, which to me is God. So I just said, God is with me and I am on his side. When I thought those words, the sleep paralysis and shadow person just left. While I was having sleep paralysis, I wasn't able to move and talk. Every time this happened, I felt weak and tired, like if I closed my eyes, I could fall back asleep. This only happened at my grandparents' apartment. I have no idea why. They are the most bright, positive, loving people I have ever known. Thanks for letting me share my story. Story 3, Crackhead Lady on Gramercy Place. When I was 15, I had a boyfriend I met while visiting my grandparents. I was living in a foster home, and then I would go visit my grandparents every other weekend and on summer vacation. I would hang out a lot with my boyfriend and his friends a lot. We would all go sneak into my old elementary school, Pio Pico, and I would watch them play basketball. One time, while waiting for one of our friends to come hang out, an older lady came up to us. She looked like she did a lot of drugs, and her eyes were big and bloodshot. She was really skinny too. The guys were all talking to her, and I remember my boyfriend would tell me about this older lady that would come by and talk to them and give them free weed. They called her Auntie. So she was obviously on something. She was looking at me weird, like she was angry that I was there. She was holding a little axe, the ones that are used to chop things. She also had a big chunk of flesh missing on her top forehead. She was telling them about how the guy was trying to get her, so she had to chop him and started to chop at a tree by us. And one of the guys was like, "No, auntie, jokingly. I was thinking, is this her normal behavior? Because they didn't seem as afraid. I wanted to cry and run away. She kept looking at me like she knew that I was scared and wanted to run. I thought she was going to attack me because she is looking and standing towards me and my boyfriend went in front of me. She just kept talking and I stood behind him. One of the guys was like, "All right, auntie, we will talk to you later," and started to walk and we all followed. And as we were all waking, I looked back and she was just staring at us with a blank stare. So creepy. I thought I was about to get attacked. Don't do drugs, guys. A Burlington Haunting Part 2. Back in the beginning of February this year, 2025, I transferred job locations. I used to work at the Burlington on the northeast side of El Paso, Texas, and now I work on the west side of town. The northeast location had some unexplainable things happen in the store. Stuff like stuffed animals falling over and random lights turning on and off. I thought I had escaped the random spooky incidents, but I think something may have followed me to this location. I've been here a little over a month at this location, and for the first few weeks, things were going well. I was learning the layout of the store, getting to know my new coworkers, and learning what my new duties were for this location. Just like any store, we had our run-in with shoplifters, but it was never anything I couldn't handle. Then things took a scary and violent turn. It was March 1st and El Paso was already in the midst of punishing dust storms. They were so bad you couldn't see 6 feet in front of you. The store was quiet during the storms because no one wanted to leave their home. This is where things started getting creepy. The first incident was just before closing on a Saturday night. I walked past the entrance doors, pushing a load of shopping carts to the side, when I saw someone following me in the reflection of the glass doors. They looked short and dressed in all black with a hood. I turn around and I don't see anyone. I even look back at the reflection and nothing is there. I was going to just chalk it up to be exhausted until the next night I worked. Sunday night, right at around closing like the night before, something starts happening with the entrance doors. Instead of a shadow figure following me, the security alarm starts sounding like someone is trying to steal something, but no one is around the doors. The sound blares while my supervisor and I try to find what's causing the issue. The alarm is so loud you can hear it in the break room in the back of the store. Just as suddenly as it started, it stops. 10 minutes of constant ringing, then suddenly silence. It was a creepy situation for sure, but it was nothing compared to the 14th. Again, right around closing time, hardly anyone is in the store, and something happens that no one saw coming. A massive pillar of fire erupts in the store in the men's section. The sudden inferno blazes while we grab the fire extinguishers and rush to put it out. People in the store started to record videos of the flames before running out. The fire department was called and the flames were fully extinguished. After damage assessment, the origin of the fire is unknown. It just seemed to erupt out of the floor like hell was trying to break through. Nothing else has happened since the 14th, but I've been working mornings since then. I close tonight. Hopefully things stay calm tonight. Stalker, creepy neighbor? This happened to me while I was in middle school. For background, we used to live in a really crappy and old house. In a really crappy and old neighborhood, our house had 2 types of fences. In the very back of our backyard was a tall wooden fence. In the front and sides of the house was a generic white picket fence. The first year that we lived here, it was very quiet. We never saw many neighbors around or rarely heard anything. This changed, however, when I began to hear knocking at my window. This happened for a couple of weeks. Every time I had told my parents, they did not believe me. I am very spiritual. And then I used to think our house was haunted. It creaked a lot and always had weird noises, which I counted as evidence. The knocking continued to get worse over weeks. I remember thinking that the knocking was coming from the mirror in my room because it was so loud it sounded like it was coming from my room. I had 2 windows in my room, one above my nightstand and one that was right beside my bed. I want to specify this knocking only came from the one above my nightstand. The window beside my bed had a giant metal box underneath it. It had loud fans on it. I don't know the name of it, LOL. The other window had bushes below it. The knocking only grew over the next few weeks. At this point, I had confided in my younger sister about it. since my parents did not believe me about it. I found out that she had also heard loud knocking from her own windows. I did tell my parents that we both heard noises. My dad did say he had investigated but did not find anything. There was one night I remember very vividly. I had managed to make a pillow fort in my room with chairs and sheets and had been sleeping in it this night. It was late summer and I couldn't sleep, so I watched the Dolan twins on YouTube. I had eventually put away my phone on my nightstand, rolled over and tried to fall asleep. That's when the soft tapping on my window started. I was used to it at this point, but still I was terrified. I laid still and waited for it to go, but it didn't. The tapping turned into loud knocks, then soon into pounding at my window. I refused to move. At this point I was crying. I thought the glass was going to shatter from how hard the pounding on my window had been. I had heard my window shaking as it proceeded, and as soon as it had started, it had stopped. The knocking from here had seemed to somewhat stop, but this only led to weirder things happen. I remember looking at the bushes that were shifted weirdly under my window, and I guess this is when it really hit me that a person had been doing this, not some ghost. Other weird things that had happened at the house included, there was one night when my family had gotten home pretty late, and I remember, like straight out of a horror movie, in the large bushes under my sister's window, I had heard a phone go off. It was pitch black outside, so I didn't see anybody at all, but I swear on everything to this day I did hear a phone ping. This had happened twice to me. I had heard a phone ping under my window a couple of nights later. This time I was in bed. Random rocks, Josh marbles would show up outside. I never really thought anything of it, but I did find it weird. Outside in front of our garage, we used to find large rocks, the kind that you would find at a playground. Our house did not have any of these. Along with those, we would find small marbles. The reason I point to my neighbor for this is because he was the only neighbor we would ever see. It was rare to see him, but usually he was just in his yard. If I had seen him, or he had caught me looking at him, he would move out of sight behind our larger wood fences. There was one specific day where he had really scared me and my sister. My dad had left for something, and my sister, I, and my mom were the only people home. Me and my sister, I'll call her A, were sitting on the back porch swing. We did this regularly almost, sitting and talking as the sun began to set. We faced towards our white fences, and at this moment, I had been looking around the yard. That was when I saw him, our neighbor at our fence, peering over and watching me and A. I tried ignoring him until he started walking along our white fence. He paced back and forth beside our fence, watching us, not speaking. He did this for a couple of minutes before our mother noticed, I guess through the window. She made us come inside and she stayed at our glass back door to watch him. He kept pacing. After a while of him doing this, him not speaking, leaving, and showing no signs of stopping, my mother called our grandfather to come over and Dad to come back. Once my grandfather did show up, the neighbor left and went back into his house. After this, we didn't hear much from him. We did hear occasional knocks or did find rocks, but other than that, he stayed quiet. My fear about a stalker was confirmed after we had moved. The family that had moved in after us had 2 sons. I believe they were about the same age as me and A. The new residents reported that once after their oldest son had accidentally threw away something and had went to find it in the garbage outside. The next morning they got a letter on their front porch, not in the mailbox. If I remember, it read something along the lines of, "I saw your son last night digging through the trash. You should tell him to be more careful. You don't know who is watching." The family moved shortly afterwards. I told my parents about this, and apparently the family had been experiencing similar things like me and A did when we lived there. As far as I am aware, nobody lives at that house, nor was the person who left notes, knocked, etc., was ever found caught. It does freak me out to think about how my parents did not believe us, only for them to be proven wrong by the next family that moved in. This story turned out way longer than I had intended, but I wanted to share my story just for the fun of it. Thanks for reading. Footsteps in the attic of a home that I once lived in. I mentioned this in passing in the "What is this?" subreddit and didn't notice that there was some people that wanted to know more about it until after the thread was locked, so here I am to make things right. I don't have all the answers to what happened, but hopefully, if this post reaches someone who might be experiencing something similar, It'll get them to talk openly about it and look for non-paranormal sources safely. When I was 12, my parents came home to tell my older sister and I that they had bought a new house and took us over to see it. It was a 2,164 square foot single level home situated right off the fairway of a golf course with lots of living space, 4 bedrooms, and 2.5 baths. From the outside of the house, it looked totally normal, but the inside, anything but. The living room and dining room were entirely baby blue. Carpet, walls, mantel, curtains, and even the large white granite fireplace had baby blue paint on it. Criminal. The family rooms had the largest floral print that I've ever seen in my life with matching curtains. We're talking blooms 2 feet wide. Every room had an outlandishly done theme. I thought my parents were crazy, but when we got to the bedrooms, I started to cry, refusing to live there as every single bedroom door had a double-keyed deadbolt on it. The kind that can only be opened or locked with a key from either side of the door. I argued that the person that had been living there before was crazy. My parents assured me that it was just a woman who'd won the house in a divorce, let the house fall into foreclosure. Because it was so cheap for its size, $118,000, they promised that they would renovate the entire place and replace all of those creepy bedroom doors. Took months for the house to be fully renovated, and as promised, it was a normal home again, though there was some tiny flecks of baby blue paint left on the rough granite fireplace. Thinking back, I can understand why my parents looked past its eccentricity, as it was a very nice house with a good floor plan. I'm still in agreement with 13-Yo-Me when we finally moved in that those deadbolts were a bad sign that my parents should have heeded. My parents ended up splitting up a few months later, so it was just my mom, sister, and myself living there. And me, I thought the house was haunted. At night, I would hear footsteps starting at the back end of the hall where my mom's bedroom was and make their way down to my room at the front of the house. The first time I heard them, I turned my light on and stared at the ceiling, noting that there was a tiny hole in it just over my bed. I started staying awake at night reading until I heard the footsteps start and then glare up at the tiny hole, pondering whether it was even big enough for someone to peer down into the room back at me. Out of curiosity, I checked the other rooms, and sure enough, they all had holes in the ceilings too. Because things were so turbulent there with my parents' divorce, I never said anything about it. The three of us were fighting all the time anyways, as our belongings kept mysteriously ending up in each other's rooms. I'd find things of my mom's or sister's in my room and be accused of stealing them when I had no idea how they ended up in there. Same thing would happen with my things, so that definitely added to the turbulence in the home, though I did try pointing out that there was something wrong with the house. My mom just got mad. Worse yet, one night during dinner, my mom found pins in her mashed potatoes just as she was about to take a bite. She accused my sister and I of trying to kill her, but I honestly don't know how the pins got in there. Hole in the ceiling, maybe? I don't know. Things got a lot more turbulent after that. One day, after 3 years of living there, I came home from school and sat down in the breakfast nook to do my homework as usual. I'd barely started working on it when I noticed that the room smelled very strongly of Old Spice, a cologne my dad never used, and it had literally been 3 years since a man stepped foot in the house. In fear, I grabbed my homework, went straight out the nearby sliding glass door, and did my homework on the porch of the backyard, confident that golfers would be zero passing by as I worked. My sister came home about an hour later, and I rushed back into the house to tell her what I had experienced. We stood in the breakfast nook for a few minutes, sniffing the air, and nothing was there. She dismissed it as my imagination, but I didn't imagine it. Another odd scent thing was that, occasionally, there would be the smell like something died in the kitchen on warm days. My mom would joke rather darkly that it was probably the prior owner, and explained that she had disappeared a few months after her divorce had finalized. I knew that last part wasn't a joke, as we had been receiving her mail for years, writing no longer at this address, and sticking it back in the mailbox. Sometimes I wonder if my mom was only half joking and really thought the prior owner was under the house. And other times, I wonder if the smell was something else entirely. Once my sister moved out to go to college, it was just my mom and I. Eventually, she decided the house was too big for the two of us, and we moved into a smaller home after living in this house for 5 years. So to recap, missing prior owner, deadbolts on the bedroom doors, footsteps walking above all the bedrooms at night, Tiny holes in the ceiling, missing or mysteriously misplaced items, the smell of men's cologne, the occasional smell of rot. Teen me thought the house was haunted. That's what I said when I confided the story about the house to my friends and boyfriends. That's what footsteps are in the attic, right? It was about 4 years after we'd moved out of that house that the three of us went out to dinner along with my sister and my boyfriends. We were in the middle of dinner when my boyfriend, at the time trying to make conversation, said that I had told him about how we'd all lived in a haunted house. I was super embarrassed. My mom and sister were puzzled, and I explained that I heard footsteps at night. My sister, shocked, said that she'd heard them too, walking up and down the length of the bedrooms. As we were talking about the missing things and confirming that we'd not really stolen anything, and that afternoon that I'd smelled cologne, we realized that our mom was frozen and white as a sheet. We asked her what was wrong, and she explained. Apparently, when the contractor was renovating the house, he'd gone up into the attic to check things out there and found an old mattress, empty wine bottles, some holding candles, and a bunch of trash up there as if someone had been living in the attic. My mom said they cleared it out and decided not to tell either my sister or I because we were already dead set against the house. Since then, I have 1,000 unanswered questions. Did someone make their way back up there after the renovation was done? Were they the footsteps at night? Were they coming down into the house while we were all away with work and school and moving things around, causing trouble? Was that why I smelled cologne so strongly that one day? Were they actually in the house still? Did they drop pins through a ceiling hole into my mom's food as that scared us all? Was the rotting smell the prior owner under the house, or was it the smell of their waste in the attic? Were they the prior owner or the reason why the prior owner had keyed deadbolts on all of the doors and eventually disappeared? We'll never know because we didn't talk about it as we were too busy fighting and not talking about what we were hearing at night. Creepy sleepover experience. Strange disclaimer. I'm not the best at grammar, so this story almost sounds fake, but it's not. Last year during April, I, at the time 14F, had a group of 3 friends, 16F, who we'll call F for this story, 14FL, and 12MZ, came over to my house for a sleepover, this being the first sleepover I've had at my house. It started out normal with playing games, taking the bus to Taco Bell for dinner, buying snacks and watching TV. But when it got to around midnight, we decided to sneak out of my house via the back door and go to the park that's 5 minutes from where I live. We played at the park for about 20 minutes and took some pictures before deciding to head towards the haunted woods nearby, which is our usual hangout place during the day, one of my friend's uncles giving us the idea the day prior. Due to always being there, we know it was pretty haunted and had ghosts, and what F says is the demon spirit of a man that killed his own daughter in the woods about 10 years prior. F knowing this due to being a protector for young children's spirits and has let the little girl's spirit attach onto her. For context, F is a medium and can see and speak to the dead and often tells me where spirits are. It took us about 6 minutes to get to the woods. When arriving, we came up with the idea to play hide and seek for a bit. We split into groups of 2, me and L and F and Z. Me and L walk away while the other 2 counted. After 5 minutes, we felt like we were being watched from the trees around us, but we ignored it and I played it off as my older brother, 17, who was a miscarriage, just making sure we were safe. We found a hiding spot behind a bench that had a large bush behind it. We sat on the ground facing the bush, on the edge of the woods on a massive green area by the main road. At 1 a.m., the game started, F and Z now looking for us. 5 minutes later, the creepy stuff start. We hear people talking, but no one being there. Movement in the bush and footsteps, we didn't think too much of it, due to it being a public area in the weekend, so it could have been some teenagers. After 5 more minutes, I see 2 bright flashlights in a clearing in the woods shining at us. Thinking it's our friends, I say to L, "Looks like we've been found." But after saying I got a phone call from F, I answer F, "Meet us by the pond now." Me, "Why?" F, "Just meet us by the pond." Me, "All right." I agree after hearing how scared she sounded and hung up. Me and L get up and decide to run, with our flashlights on, across the green since the pond was the other side of it. I turn around to see if L was close behind me, which she was, but more diagonal. My flashlight's light hits something skinny, large and pale gray, on all fours, crawling in an inhuman way. Crawling in the opposite direction of us. I continue running, but faster this time, not wanting to know what it is and thinking it was a skinwalker. We get to the pond, shined our flashlights to our friends to signal it was us, and ran over to them. When we got to them, F told me that when they were looking for me, she felt something wrap its hands around her neck, almost choking her, and say, "1 down, 3 to go, Mac," which is me, is next. Already knowing it was the demon ghost man, she called me. We left the woods quickly and half ran back to my house, snuck back in, saged ourselves, and sat in the living room, which was where we were sleeping for the night. F asked me to come with her up to the bathroom to help her remove her makeup, where she told me what her heard the demon say in the woods. We told my older sister and went to sleep an hour later. We've never been back to the woods at night since. Sorry it was long and made no sense. I'm not the best at grammar and punctuation. Emergency alert. This is your final warning. Have you ever heard something you weren't supposed to? I'm not talking about an overheard whisper in a darkened hallway or a hushed conversation you accidentally eavesdropped on. No, this was different. This was something impossible. Something that shouldn't exist yet. Something from the future. I did, and now I don't think I have much time left. It started 2 nights ago. I was up late, too late, mindlessly flipping through stations on my old radio, the kind with a stiff tuning dial and a scratched-up casing, the kind you don't really see anymore. I'd found it at a garage sale months back, drawn to its nostalgic charm, and ever since it had become my companion during long, restless nights. I'm one of those people who need background noise while working, static-filled music, late-night talk shows, even those strange, distant signals that flicker in and out of dead frequencies. But that night, something different came through. At first, it was barely a whisper beneath the crackle of empty airwaves, a thin, ghostly hum fighting to be heard. I almost ignored it, almost turned the dial again. But then, a voice came. "This is an emergency alert for all residents. This is not a test." I froze. The voice wasn't like the usual robotic warnings I'd heard before. It was off, slower, almost hesitant, like it was being forced out against some invisible resistance. A deep mechanical distortion coated every word, stretching them out unnaturally. Please listen carefully. This broadcast is coming from the future. A nervous chuckle slipped from my lips. A joke. Had to be. Some underground station having fun with late-night listeners. Maybe a creepy pasta-inspired prank, trying to get under people's skin. But then, the voice came again. "If you are hearing this, you have less than 24 hours. They are already here. They are watching." A shiver ran down my spine. And then, a sudden burst of static. Deafening, swallowing everything. The radio hissing like a living thing before cutting off entirely. I just sat there, staring at the radio, my fingers clenched tight around the armrest of my chair, the tremble in my hands betraying the fear I didn't want to acknowledge. It had to be fake, some weird experimental transmission, a trick, a hoax, something, anything. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, the unease crawled beneath my skin, settling deep into my bones. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 12:03 a.m. A perfectly ordinary moment in a perfectly ordinary night. And yet, nothing felt ordinary anymore. With a shaky breath, I switched the radio off, buried myself under my blankets, and squeezed my eyes shut. I forced my mind to push it away, to label it as nothing more than late-night paranoia. I was wrong. I didn't want to hear anything else. I turned everything off and headed to my room. I lay in bed. My eyelids were heavy, my body sinking into the mattress, exhaustion pulling at me like unseen hands. The strange radio broadcast from earlier still lingered in my mind, but I had almost convinced myself it was nothing. Just a hoax, a trick of my overtired brain. I was just about to sleep, and then, at exactly 2 a.m., my phone buzzed, a sharp, urgent vibration against my nightstand. My stomach twisted as I reached for it, dread pooling in my chest like ice-cold water. An emergency alert. But something was wrong. There was no text, no explanation, just a pulsing red notification, swallowing the screen, beating like a heart. And then I saw the radio, sitting on the table near my bed. I didn't put it there. I knew I hadn't put it there. But it was there. And before I could even process what I was looking at, before I could breathe or think or react, it turned on. By itself. The dial didn't move. No one touched it. But the second the static cleared, the voice came through again. Clearer this time. Stronger. You ignored the first warning. A cold sensation slid down my spine, like icy fingers pressing into my skin. Do not acknowledge them. Do not answer if they knock. Do not let them in. A loud, ear-piercing screech of static ripped through the air, rattling the speakers. Then silence. The room felt unbearably still. And then a sharp, deliberate sound. I nearly dropped my phone. The knocking had come from my front door. I live alone. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one should be here. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Again, it was slow, even. The kind of knocking that didn't ask for permission, but announced its presence. I forced my legs to move, each step feeling heavier than the last. My breath felt too loud in the suffocating quiet. I reached the door and pressed my eye against the peephole. Nothing. No one was there, but the knocking continued. I backed away, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Do not look outside. My stomach twisted. A sick feeling spread through me like something was crawling beneath my skin. I couldn't resist. I moved toward the window, inching forward like something unseen was pushing against my chest. Slowly, carefully, I pulled the blinds back just enough to peek through, and I saw a man standing. Or at least, I think it was a man. He stood on the sidewalk directly facing my house, perfectly still. Too still. His posture was unnatural, rigid like a mannequin. His face was turned toward me, but he wasn't looking at me. His head was tilted at an impossible angle, as if something inside his neck had snapped. He wasn't moving, but he was there, watching. My phone buzzed again. They know you see them. A breath caught in my throat. My hands went numb. I stumbled back from the window, yanking the blinds shut so hard they rattled. And then the knocking stopped. But the silence that followed, it was worse. Much, much worse. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat in my room, back pressed against the cold wall, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath shallow and uneven. I waited. I waited for another message, another warning, another sound that would prove I wasn't losing my mind. But nothing came. Hours crawled by, stretching endlessly as the darkness outside deepened. The house was suffocatingly silent, every shadow stretching too far, every sound making me flinch. When the sun finally rose, I let out a shaky breath. The golden light seeped through my window, washing over the room like a safety net, chasing away the night's horrors. And suddenly it all felt stupid. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe some underground radio stunt designed to freak people out. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, weaving fear into something bigger than it was. I told myself I was fine. I told myself it was over. But then, at exactly midnight, the radio switched on. By itself, the static was deafening, crackling like fire, growing louder and louder until it spoke. This is your final warning. My entire body locked up. The voice was different now, heavier, darker. They will come inside tonight. You must not run. You must not scream. You must not speak, it said. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as if something invisible was pressing down on it. My fingers curled around my bedsheets, my body frozen in place. Then, my phone vibrated. I swallowed, hesitating, then slowly lowered my gaze. A message. Do not let them take you. My stomach dropped. The screen flickered. Then it went completely black. At that exact moment, the lights in my house flickered. Once, twice, then The front door unlocked by itself. A cold sweat broke out along my spine. My mouth went dry. I did not unlock that door, but it had opened. I grabbed the baseball bat leaning against my closet, clutching it so tightly my fingers ached. I didn't know if it would do anything, but I needed something, anything. I backed into the farthest corner of my room, my entire body tensed, ears straining for any sound. Then I heard them. Footsteps, slow, dragging. They weren't heavy, but they weren't light either. They sounded wrong, like something that wasn't entirely sure how to move properly. I clenched my jaw, biting down on the urge to scream. Then I heard breathing, too slow, too deep, like someone trying to imitate what a human should sound like. Cree-eek. Then a slow, agonizing cree-eek echoed through the hallway. The floorboards groaned beneath them as they moved through the house. They were looking for me. My phone buzzed again. One last message. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what it said, but I did. Do not blink, it said. I stiffened. Then, a shadow. Right outside my bedroom door. I could see it, a sliver of darkness beneath the gap. It didn't move. It didn't shift. It just stood there, waiting. I could hear my own heartbeat hammering in my skull, blood rushing through my ears so loudly it felt like a roar. And then, it moved, towards me. Every cell in my body screamed for me to run, but I couldn't. My muscles refused to obey. And the warning, I couldn't ignore it. Do not blink. So I didn't. My eyes locked on the shadow, burning from the strain. Tears welled up, spilling down my cheeks, but I did not blink. I couldn't. And then, the lights flickered. The radio let out a final burst of static, and just like that, they were gone. The shadow disappeared. The air went still. The house was empty. I don't know what would have happened if I had blinked, but I never want to find out. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what they were. But I know one thing. I am still here. But something has changed. The radio, it doesn't work anymore. Every station is just dead air. My phone, it doesn't receive emergency alerts anymore. But last night, I looked outside. He was there, standing across the street, the same stiff posture, the same tilted head, waiting, watching. I don't think this is over, and I don't think I have much time left.